What would you say is an unwanted emotion that you have had to develop a tolerance for?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know. I would say maybe. I mean, would you consider just panic, like not the manifestation of it, but just that kind of catastrophizing gene? Because I think that whatever the hell is at the core of that, I like being neurotic, but I don't like whatever makes me fall for those types of fantasies. Like the worst cases. But I don't know what that is. There's some emotion that's constant through it, but I'm not entirely sure what. But that one that ruins my life day in and day out. How about you?
I guess I would say panic because that's the one that's been the most necessary. I have had panic disorder my whole life. And what I had to learn how to do very early, before I started doing a lot of the work on myself, I just had to do the work on the panic. And it's important to make the distinction between panic and anxiety, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So for me, panic attacks have always been hypochondriacal. They have always been thinking that I'm having a heart attack, thinking that something is wrong with my health. And I sort of had to learn to identify panic attacks as they were starting. And what I would say is that panic attacks start with an anxiety and then they progress to panic. So you have to catch it when it's still anxiety is what I find. And so I don't know that there's a way to make peace or to make friends, so to speak, with the panic itself. But I have certainly had to learn how to make friends with the anxiety itself. And so when I feel that first little layer of anxiety coming over me, if I'm able to catch it, then I'm able to challenge it. So I guess then there's a difference between what have you had to cope with to survive and what have you had to cope with to be actualized.
Yeah. Well, it hits both nerves for me in a way, because it has become a survival issue because of how hard it can hammer me. But whatever makes me react to stimuli that way is something that's prevented me from feeling actualized. That's what I've been trying to narrow in on in recent years, is just what's at that kernel level inside me that's making me kind of still that wide-eyed about something, I'm still walking into shit fully vulnerable in the wrong ways, and that prevents me from being vulnerable in the right ways, or prevents me from developing in the way that I want to. It's been very difficult to pinpoint. I haven't been able, it feels like a very young thing. It feels like something that I definitely had with me when I was in my early youth, because it's a very, very familiar feeling, but I haven't been able to name it yet.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If you had to choose depression or anxiety for the rest of your days, full throttle, but you only got one of them, have you found one of them to be more fruitful or more livable?
This is a really hard question.
Yeah, I always thought I had my mind made up about it, and it just isn't. It's not a good situation from either angle.
When I dissociate from anxiety, I become a workaholic, but it's never the work that I want to do. It's chores, When I'm depressed, I haven't had a full-on depressive episode in a long time, so I don't know how functional I am anymore. I used to be able to write a lot when I was depressed. Same goes for a lot of people, I think, but I don't know if I can still... First of all, I don't know if I want to write the kind of stuff that comes out of that anymore. That's one thing. And second of all, I just don't know how functional I'd be. I don't know if being chronically depressed now would suit my values. You know what I mean?
No, I totally do. Yeah, but it's funny to hear, but I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah. And it's a weird way to say it, but
it's true. I mean, it just is more. I think we talked about this on the phone the other day, that it's just more fun to be emo when you're a kid, When you're an adult emo, it's way less cool.
So I'm assuming your mind used to be made up about depressed.
Oh, hell yeah. Every second I'd be like, I'll marry to that. And in a lot of ways I thought I had. I mean, it was just this is my soulmate. It felt terrible, but it also felt true. But yeah, now the way depression hits me is not fun. And it's not necessarily like dangerous. It's like, cause it kind of was back in the day, but now it's just soggy and like, it just sucks. It feels like depression.
Yeah.
And there's no illusions about it being like, oh, no one understands me. It's like, no, I don't know. I don't want to get out of bed. But anxiety, I don't know. That one just unravels me. So, but I would choose maybe anxiety, because at least it's energetic.
Yeah, and I don't know. What I would say is that, like, if I had to choose between depression with the frequency that I experience it now, or anxiety with the frequency that I experience it now, I would choose depression.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah.
But chronically all the time, I don't know if I could choose depression.
Yeah. 'Cause that's what I mean. Like anxiety, at least in that case, if it's one or the other 24/7, at least anxiety is an abundance. At least it feels like an abundance. It's a shitload of something that you can now spend your entire life learning how to govern and get good at using, like you've got a lot of it. It's like you figure out how to wrangle it and how to work with it. But depression, it's just a freaking void after a while, and it just eats you alive. And
yeah, that's the thing, is it would get tired. It would get old. I know that, like, while in a depressive episode, I can still offer music and I can still offer dark humor, but I don't think I'd be able to offer like substantive conversation that isn't like self-deprecating every 2 minutes. And I don't know that I would be able to like contribute the same way that I can now. So, because the thing is too, I think anxiety is easier to name and compartmentalize than depression. That doesn't mean that it's easier to tolerate. That doesn't mean that it's easier to cope with, but it's easier to, this isn't true for all people. I was going to say it's easier to pinpoint the source, but for a lot of people, generalized anxiety, there is no source. But we were talking last week about, giving things names, and just knowing that those things have names and knowing that they serve very important functions, that helps a lot.